Hello, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Friday, December 31st, 2021, and a happy new year to all of you guys as well. I'm your host, George Kerth, joined by Cody Roadcap. Cody, how you plan on ringing in the new year this year?
Obviously, I'm going to be talking to you, talk a little football, get excited for the Sunday matchups. If you're a college fan, get excited for the Saturday matchups. Hopefully, the bowl games still happen for the college football playoffs, but should be a good way to end out this year.
Definitely agree. I will be watching some of those bowl games here as well this weekend before prepping for Sunday football. And we were going to be talking about every single Sunday game this week, which is every game in the NFL. It's interesting having no Thursdays, no Saturdays. I guess there is a Monday this week. I am wrong, but still. And we're going to talk some NFL news and notes on this episode as well. I don't think you guys want to hear me talk any more intro, so why don't we just jump right in here to NFL news. I feel like I'm going to have to start stepping up my intros here because Cody totally outperformed me on our last episode on Tuesday. But here we are. First bit of news here. We had 15 Hall of Fame finalists announced for 2022. We're not going to go through all 15, but Cody, I'm going to open up the floor to you. Why don't you talk about one or two of your favorites that you want to make the Hall of Fame this year?
Alrighty, my two favorites are pretty simple. First, even though he was a Chicago Bear, Devin Hester is by far the most dynamic returner of my lifetime. He changed the way special teams was played, how people attacked the field. He was a true difference maker, and I think that's definitely qualifies for the Hall of Fame, even though he doesn't have, he started out as a cornerback and then went to wide receiver. He doesn't have the stats at those positions, but as a returner, he was special, and the Hall of Fame is about special players. So he should get in. And then the guy that has gone way too long without getting in, some people might say I'm a homer, but that is safety Leroy Butler, the inventor of the Lambeau Leap. The guy has better stats than some of the recent safeties to get in. I can go on and on about why he should be in, but he's the only player left on the 90s all-decade team that's not in the Hall of Fame. That needs to be corrected, and Leroy should get in this year.
That's a crazy stat. The only player on the 90s all-decade team that has not yet been in. And I feel like his eligibility has got to be running out soon. His last year in the NFL was 2001. So hopefully for you and the Packers fans out there, he does. I was also going to say Devin Hester, but I think that's just because I know growing up watching football, he was one of those players that really resonated with me. It was always fun watching anytime a punt happened. Like you normally, it's a boring play. Devin Hester was never a boring play. But I'm just going to go to two other people who back when I was watching football as a kid, I feel like just stuck out to me. The first one would have to be Patrick Willis. I understand he might have had a little bit of a shorter career than some of these guys, but he was the prototype of what a linebacker should be in the NFL, and he was just dominant in his time. So he's definitely one person. And then the other one is Reggie Wayne. I remember all the times watching Peyton in Indianapolis and how dominant that offense was, and it was always around Reggie Wayne. So those are the two that I remember the most growing up, and I think those are the two, because of that I would want the most in the Hall of Fame from this class.
Yeah, I agree with both those. There's a lot of good names on this list. It is going to be tough, as always, as they only allow up to 8 entries per year, so that's something to watch out. I think, guys like DeMarcus Ware, he's definitely in consideration. He had a pretty dominant career. Even guys like Andre Johnson, who get forgotten about because he played so long on the Houston Texans, but he was quite dominant. But that's where we're at with the.
I don't know if you can just forget about Andre Johnson after that fist fight he had, though.
With
like
Cortland
that's
Finnegan.
The thing that I remember the most. Yeah, with Cortland Finnegan. That's the one I remember the most about Andre Johnson.
Yeah, Hall of Fame football player, Hall of Fame fighter, I guess, is what we're trying to say here. So we'll get to find out the day before the Super Bowl on who gets in to the Hall of Fame, who doesn't. It should be a close race this year. Moving on to some other news, we have some older quarterbacks talking about their future. And the first one is Ben Roethlisberger. There's been some speculation of this all season, but in his press conference this past week, he suggested that this will most likely be all signs are pointing to this being his last home game at Heinz Field, and he's just going to take it all in. It's against the Cleveland Browns. It's on Monday night. What a special way to go out. I do find it interesting. They're still in the playoff race. I think they can still technically win their division, so they might even be able to host a playoff game. But so maybe he's foreshadowing there. But Big Ben, let's talk about him. Is he a guy that we'll be talking about a few years after he's gone, that he is eligible for the Hall of Fame? What are your thoughts on Big Ben?
He, I think, is going to be a very controversial name when it comes up, because I don't know if it's just because we obviously we were really young, or we didn't watch football back in the last generation of quarterbacks. But like, I feel like there wasn't as many fringe quarterbacks in that generation as there was in this generation. So Ben had a longer career than someone like a Donovan McNabb, but we saw all the crazy hype that came around him. But he was in that similar kind of playing, level. And it's always like, oh, he was never completely dominant. He had some very fantastic seasons. He had some Super Bowls, but like, is that enough when you consider there was always at least 3 to 5 quarterbacks that were better than him in his generation any given year? So I personally think he's not going to make it, but I'm also the person that's like, oh, Eli Manning's not going to make it either. And I would put them two very similarly in my rankings.
Yeah, I think what you stated there was that's maybe they hasn't quite. I think Roethlisberger definitely has a better case than Eli. I do think they'll both get in, but they were drafted the same year, and one other guy that wasn't drafted or was drafted that same year was Phillip Rivers. Those were the big three coming out of the 2004 draft, and it's almost crazy because you think two of those are going to get into the Hall of Fame, and probably the most deserving of those three would be Phillip Rivers. He just doesn't have the playoff wins, the playoffs. He doesn't
If
have
there
the
was
Super
a
Bowls.
regular season Hall of Fame, Phillip Rivers is in it 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So that's definitely going to be fun to watch. We'll see if Big Ben stays true to his word of this being his last home game. We'll see how that pans out. His play on the field has definitely declined a little bit, so I could see that happening. And then the other quarterback is the quarterback we've talked about a lot this past year, this offseason, this year. He was asked about his future. He talked about it a little bit with Pat McAfee on Tuesday. He was asked about it on his press conference on Wednesday. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers, of course. And he was asked if he was planning to come back or if he was going to retire. And he said, I wouldn't rule that out. Now, I know that's the quote that is, circulating the internet. And don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure if the Packers win the Super Bowl, he gets his 4th MVP and Super Bowl MVP, he'll go out on top. Like, I could totally see that as a possibility for Aaron Rodgers. But I do think if you listen to his full press conference, you come away feeling like two things. He's either retiring or he's going to be a Green Bay Packer in 2022. He talked about how he's rebuilt his relationship with Brian Gutekunst. He's talked about how this has been the most fun year he's ever had. He talked about how much it meant to have Randall Cobb back for him. So he does sound like a guy that is very thankful of the situation, and it could be his last hurrah. But at the same time, an MVP walking away is kind of hard to fathom.
Exactly. Because when other quarterbacks have gone out on top, you think of like John Elway did it. He was not an MVP level quarterback. Peyton Manning was carried by a defense to a Super Bowl and went out on top. Like, Rodgers is still playing at a high level. I feel like if there was still that big rift with the Packers front office, there would be a better chance of him retiring. But I think there is probably a much better chance of him coming back and playing for the Packers next year, in my opinion. I just noticed that he doesn't like to give away things in press conferences. Just from listening to him all year with the toe situation and the COVID situation, it feels like everything he says is calculated to a point where it's supposed to be a little bit confusing, or he just doesn't want to give away it for sure. So I wouldn't rule that out. It's probably just him thinking, I want to make him think a little bit, but I'm really leaning towards not retiring. Like, that's the way that I took it with everything together. But he obviously wouldn't say that because that's just not the kind of personality Aaron Rodgers is.
No, I think you hit it well. He is very calculated with his words. He thinks about it. He crafts it in his head. And he also knows that it's a business and there will be some sort of contract renegotiation if he were to stay with Green Bay. So he can't come out and be like, I want to stay. I want to be a Green Bay Packer next year. Like, because he is under contract. Like, they'll most likely do something to move the money, but that takes away any of the leverage. So I think he is very calculated in that standpoint. But again, I think there is a possibility that he retires. I would say going into this season, I would have said him playing for another team, him being back at the Packers, him retiring was my top three, and that's the order. I will put him playing for the Packers next year at number 1 now. I will put him retiring at number 2 and him playing for another team number 3. I think they're all still viable options, but it's just the way the season goes, the way he is talking about it now, it seems like the tide is shifting from back in April and then August where we were with him.
Totally agree. And I'm sure we're going to have hashtag Rodgers watch back for at least a little bit this offseason as negotiations happen, as he does his end of season press conferences and all of that. So we'll keep you up to date with everything there as we get into the offseason. But for now, we're talking fantasy championships, at least if your league is doing it right. So why don't we jump right into every week 17 game in our week 17 preview. First game on the docket for week 17, Sunday 1 o'clock, because there's nothing on Saturday or Thursday, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington football team. So I'll start on the Eagles side because you guys know I like to talk about the Eagles. And running backs. So Miles Sanders is not practicing. He is out this week with his hand injury. We were talking a little bit on Tuesday on the Jordan Howard versus Boston Scott debate. I thought for a little bit there, it looked like it was going to be Boston Scott, but Jordan Howard was limited in practice on Thursday, a good sign that he will probably go this week. So keep an eye on your injury reports as we go along, but as of now, if he's still out on your waiver wire, Jordan Howard has to be a hot ad for your league.
All right, I got a question for you. I'm going to follow it up with the Jordan Howard, Boston Scott. Are you comfortable enough starting both of them this week if Jordan Howard plays? Is it just one of them? Because don't forget, we had a ton of running back injuries. People lost Darrell Henderson. People lost James Robinson. People lost Miles Sanders. So there's definitely people out there struggling or trying to figure out who's going to be their second running back this week. And against the Washington football team, what is your thoughts on playing both?
Because I think it's going to be an Eagles dominated game, I would say Jordan Howard falls into the RB2 category and Boston Scott's kind of a low end flex. So I think it could be viable to play both, but I would try to avoid Boston Scott if you can, if there's a situation where Jordan Howard plays. I can give you an example because we're going to talk about this in this game as well. Antonio Gibson was downgraded to a DNP for Thursday. Their starter would be Jarrett Patterson. If Gibson doesn't go, I would actually probably put Scott slightly above Patterson just because I don't have as much faith in him as a young running back in a poor offense as opposed to Boston Scott being RB2, but in an offense that features the run and should have a lead.
Alrighty, that's some great advice there. Other than that, the Eagles, every team is dealing with injuries, but there's not a lot of injuries that will be concerning to who you're going to be playing in fantasy. I think Jalen Hurts is back in your lineup, no questions asked, because of his rushing ability. The Washington football team, I don't think is going to give up another 50 burger, but maybe they will. But speaking of Washington, you hit on Antonio Gibson. Where are we at with Terry McLaurin? You're probably, if you had him, you probably didn't make your championship, and maybe you did. Maybe you lucked out and got some good waiver ads. But where are you at with a guy that was drafted so high expectations, but has really struggled down the stretch here?
Man, I feel like we've talked about a lot of good wide receiver ads on the waiver wire in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I would like almost all of those guys more than Terry McLaurin. First off, the Eagles' pass defense is strong. Second, Taylor Heineke should be back. He might not be. I don't think he's coming off of a full week of practice, but even yet, he's been so wishy-washy. Even when Washington's had success throwing the ball, he hasn't even really been the focal point of the offense. They've had other guys involved, like DeAndre Carter and these other guys that I don't even remember their name. I don't even know why I remember DeAndre Carter's name, to be honest. It's just a bunch of random wide receivers thrown out there, and Terry McLaurin's not getting the targets for me to feel confident to start him for a championship. It feels awful with all the injuries out there and how high you drafted him, but I just don't trust it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I figured we'd be on the same page. He hasn't scored over 6 points in fantasy since week 11. So he has not been very good. You probably haven't relied on him down the stretch. But I think that pretty much wraps up this game. I mean, we hit the big ones, the big news. Our next matchup, though, is the Los Angeles Rams at the Baltimore Ravens. This game was moved from 4 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And guys, remember, West Coast teams coming to the East Coast for a 1 o'clock game normally has some big implications. Maybe not on completely on fantasy stats, but how well the team plays, how quick the game starts. So this is something to watch out here because the Ravens, they're going to desperately need a win. Now, the big question is, will Lamar Jackson play? He was limited. He was gimpy on Wednesday. It doesn't sound like he practiced on Thursday. We don't have the official report at the time reporting, but beat reporters have said he was nowhere to be seen. The good news is Tyler Huntley did come off the COVID list. So if you're going to have, you should have Tyler Huntley as the handcuff to Lamar Jackson. He'll fit right in. But let's say Lamar Jackson does go. You saw the videos of him limping around. Do you feel full confidence throwing him back out there, or because he looks so limited mobility and that's what his big selling point on fantasy football is, are you pivoting to a different quarterback option?
I don't really feel confident in Lamar if he goes out there because, like you said, like there's probably I want to say 3 weeks this year that he has passed for enough yards to make a competent fantasy week. Normally he throws for maybe 14 points and then he is a solid quarterback because of his rushing ability. But I do not feel confident in him rushing the ball at all with how he looked at practice on Wednesday and then hearing that he probably did not practice on Thursday. I just kind of hope at this point that Tyler Huntley's the starter because I feel like, as crazy as this sounds, the man who started 3 games in his career, I am totally confident throwing him out there in fantasy, and I would have to question Lamar, and I just want sure things in my fantasy championship. So if you are a Lamar owner and he goes, I might lean towards some of those waiver ads we talked about on Tuesday, like a Tua or a Trey Lance. But if Tyler Huntley goes, he immediately jumps to the top of that streamer list, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it would be tough to bench Lamar, especially for a guy like Trey Lance, a guy we haven't seen since way early in the season, a rookie quarterback, no sure thing either. But you did bring up a good point. He only has 2 games over 300 yards passing on the season, and one of them was that 442-yard night that he had against the Colts when they came back from so many points down, and he was able to make a lot of connections there. So only 2 games over 300. If he's limited mobility, go get Joe Burrow if he's somehow available, because that would be a fantastic addition. Maybe the guy on the other team is available too. Matt Stafford. He had a pretty rough week. He hasn't looked great the last couple of weeks, but we saw how banged up this Ravens secondary is. Even a guy like Matt Stafford might be a safer play over Lamar Jackson because of how limited he appears to be with that ankle injury.
I agree. And I'm going to tie this into the wide receivers a little bit too, because I'm not 100% sure how the Rams run their schemes, but the Bengals do a good job of moving their wide receivers around the field, and all they kept doing all day was throwing to the wide receivers that were on those practice squad defensive backs that were forced to play for Baltimore because they're so banged up. So, I mean, Baltimore's probably, I want to say they're down to like cornerback 3 and cornerback 7 or something like that on their depth chart from the beginning of the season, just because of how bad they're banged up. So I look for the Rams to just exploit matchups all day, similar to what the Bengals did. So I'm not worried about Matt Stafford. I'm not worried about the Rams wide receivers. I would debate starting all 3 of them. And I definitely like Stafford more than Lamar. I don't know how available he is. I don't have that number in front of me, but I know I have no doubt. I have Stafford in the league, and I'm starting him without question.
Yeah, and we can wrap up the receivers. I agree. I think you can play all 3 of them. If you ask me to rank them, Cooper Kupp is 1, 2, and 3. And then Odell Beckham is 4, Van Jefferson is 5. So that's how I would rank the wide receivers. And then you can keep rolling with Sony Michel. I know there was some talks that, Cam Akers might be activated. He might get a few snaps, few carries. we're still waiting to see if he's actually activated. But Sonny Michel, as I mentioned on Tuesday, it still blows my mind, currently has more rushing yards in December than Jonathan Taylor. And we're all talking about Jonathan Taylor as a potential MVP. But what Sonny Michel has been able to do for the Rams, come in and settle this run game with the absence of Darrell Henderson, has been what they needed to get back on this winning streak after they struggled for a few weeks middle of the season. So Sonny Michel is definitely a safe play, almost an automatic play if you have him.
Definitely agree there. I think that'll pretty much wrap up our Rams and Ravens talk. We can move on to the exciting matchup of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New York Jets. So I want to compare this matchup a little bit to a game late last season, because I forget who the opponent was, but the Bucs blew a team out. Brady played, I think, two and a half quarters. It was the Lions. That's what it was. And everyone was worried because like maybe Brady will get up too fast and get benched. And he did get up fast and get benched, but he still put up like 25 to 30 fantasy points and a half. So I don't think there's any doubt you should play Tom Brady. You should play. I know their wide receiver room is a little bit messed up right now. I heard Antonio Brown did not practice today, but Mike Evans could be back. I wouldn't have any problems playing any of them or Ronald Jones, but the Buccaneers, like, you might end up in a situation again where Tom Brady plays 2.5 quarters and then all their starters get benched. But I think they're going to have plenty of time to get the fantasy points you're expecting out of them in that period.
Yeah, I expect Tom Brady to play the full game. I do think it'll be a little bit of a blowout. I love Ronald Jones this week because the Jets have been like bottom of the league against running backs. So I definitely love having Ronald Jones in your lineup if you were able to add him after the Fournette injury. I think the big thing you do have to watch out for is the Antonio Brown news. He came back after missing some games with that ankle injury. It is his ankle, and he had 10 receptions. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm kind of curious if this DMP is more of like a rest, like let's get him going for game day, but definitely something worth monitoring as well. And then obviously Mike Evans is a big factor if he can make it back. I feel like it might be a week early for Mike Evans. And if he's out, I think and Antonio Brown does play. Antonio Brown's in for another pretty big game.
So say there's no Evans and no Brown. The only notable weapon really on that team is Gronk. Do you play any of the wide receivers, especially in the good matchup?
I probably wouldn't. You know, if I'm fighting for, I'm not going to stretch for a Tyler Johnson or a Scotty Miller. You know, it might add Cameron
Brashad Perryman if he goes.
As much as I would love to say Brashad Perryman, no, I wouldn't do that either. But yeah, if I don't have one of their big, what was 3 that's now 2, and it's kind of only 1 at the moment. I wouldn't play any of the other guys. You know, if they all don't go, you might want to throw $1 on that, like plus 500 for the Jets or whatever the line is at that point, because the Jets could surprise some people. I'm not predicting.
At least I would think about putting the money on them to cover.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm not sure what the point spread is on that game, but yeah, if they're all out, I don't have any doubt Tom Brady's still going to put fantasy day. But the Jets plus 13.5, yeah, I would think about putting some money on that one.
That's okay. And if you do, you cannot hold us liable for any betting advice, because we're just Couch GMs that like to bet small increments on DraftKings. # not a sponsor, but they're welcome to be anytime. I think that's it.
We didn't talk Jet side of the ball at all. I just want to talk one player because I think there's basically one player you're thinking about. Tough matchup against the Bucs defense. Michael Carter, especially with Tevin Coleman on the COVID list. Any consideration of Michael Carter?
Yeah, I think you can consider him because he'll get work. Now, it might not be a big game, but maybe you lost, you know, one of the running backs we talked about that are hurt. You know, maybe you picked up Boston Scott and you had Michael Carter thinking that you could play Boston Scott. But now if Howard goes, I'd play Boston or Michael Carter over Boston Scott. I think he's definitely in that running back 2, probably a lower end running back 2, like a top, 18 to 24 range. But I still think Michael Carter is a decent option because he'll see the volume.
Definitely. That's about where I would put him as well. So that's enough Jets talk. It's the only player I would even consider. We can move on to the Miami Dolphins and the Tennessee Titans. And we just thought the Titans wide receiver room was getting healthier again, and we see a did not practice for AJ Brown. I'm still stuck on Antonio Brown apparently. He was not on the injury report Wednesday, so that is concerning news that it popped up in the middle of the week.
Yeah, and you don't forget that I know that the protocols have changed, but Julio Jones is currently on the COVID list. He has not come off of it yet, so we'll wait and see about that. It is worth noting for anyone out there that our third counterpart on this show, Tyler Snyder, will be at the game. His other game this year he went to was the New York Jets. If you anything sound familiar, they didn't have AJ Brown or Julio Jones, and they lost. We're hoping for our friend that they get a victory this weekend, but maybe he's just destined not to see those guys play.
Maybe. I mean, I hope not too. I'm hoping this AJ Brown news is precautionary and he does get a limited practice in Friday and plays, but we don't know for sure. That's very concerning when you think about it, the irony of all of that. But I don't know if that affects too much else on the team. I'm still starting Dante Foreman. I'm not starting Tannehill regardless. I think that pretty much wraps up the Titans then.
Yeah, and I think if AJ Brown plays, like I'm not worried about. He's in my lineup. He proved last week that no matter what, he's back in your lineup. So if he goes, he's in your lineup. I'm not going to try to be like, well, he was limited this week, I'm going to hold him out. Nope, I'm going to win or lose with AJ Brown in my lineup.
But actually, though, if Julio and AJ Brown go, would you think about Julio? If just Julio goes, would you think about him? He's been the one that's struggling a little more.
No, I wouldn't play Julio either way. He's been struggling. He is on the COVID list, and we have seen numerous times now there hasn't been too many players that have been, even if they get clear on the COVID list, don't have some exhaustion side effects, have to take a few extra snaps off, aren't quite themselves. We literally just saw that with Tyreek Hill last week. We've seen it with some other players. They've been slow out of the gates coming off the COVID list. So for me, it's AJ Brown and Deontay Foreman are the only two Titans I think are worthwhile this week in fantasy. But they also have a really good defense that they're going up against in the Miami Dolphins. Their defense has been great. That's their big reason why they're on their 7-game win streak. If AJ Brown wouldn't go, I think you can stream the Miami Dolphins defense against this Titans offense. They have struggled without him. So I do like that option. But we do have to talk about the Dolphins running backs. Is there any of them? Phillip Lindsay, Duke Johnson, Myles Gaskin. Is there any of them?
The most explosive option is Duke Johnson. Maybe the guy who will get the most carries is Phillip Lindsay. The guy who seems to be getting more of the passing down work and the key situation work is Myles Gaskin. I think, what I'm getting at is, like, even the person who's getting the most work is not getting enough work to get a nod from me. There's just too much of a split. There's too much mediocrity out of all of these names who should be performing. And the Titans defense is not that bad. I'm avoiding it.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I finally cut Myles Gaskin in our league of record. It was very heartbreaking as someone who's been a Myles Gaskin stan all season. So that's where I'm at with the Dolphins backfield. But George, why don't you talk about your favorite Dolphin player?
So sneaky person moving up the fantasy ranks over the last 2 months is Jalen Waddle. I feel like we haven't even been talking about him as much as he's deserved. He is now only 5 receptions away from breaking the rookie receptions record, which is currently held by Anquan Boldin. So that is very significant. He actually should be in Rookie of the Year conversation if he breaks that record. And he's somebody who has not gotten a lot of love from the fantasy community, from the NFL community in general. And he's somebody who should be a lock in your lineup now. I don't want to say I called it, but I kind of did call it like 2 weeks before he really had his breakout.
Yeah, George did. He traded Waddle for Henry Ruggs.
Right before Henry Ruggs had his situation, right before Waddle broke out.
Yeah, so George was on the hype train from the beginning. I agree. He should be in the Rookie of the Year conversation, but we're going to talk awards after the fantasy season wraps up as well. But, another guy that's in that rookie of the year conversation is Mac Jones for the New England Patriots. They are hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Patriots, though, they are dealing with a little bit of injuries at the wide receiver position. Nelson Aguilar is a DNP, while Jacoby Myers is a limited participant. Damien Harris looks like he is back and ready to go. Ramondre Stevenson is coming off the COVID list. So it looks more like this will be back to like the ground and pound type of game anyways. So with that said, what is your thoughts on Ramondre Stevenson? We just talked about players coming off the COVID list being a little bit slow, but they were both putting up decent numbers in fantasy. Would you still feel okay playing both, or are you out on Stevenson this week?
Ramondre Stevenson falls right around Boston Scott in my rankings if Jordan Howard goes. That like low end flex, I would rather go somewhere else. Especially because there's so many running backs that like to get used in New England. You'll probably see Brandon Bolden out there getting carries. And I know we were very down as a podcast on Damien Harris coming into the fantasy playoffs because of his rough matchups. But we have said before, if you get through the first 2 weeks, this matchup is juicy. And he should no doubt be in your lineups because he even outperformed expectations last week, scored multiple touchdowns. He could do it again this week and win people fantasy championships. Something we didn't expect with those matchups coming up to this point.
Yeah, definitely didn't expect it with his playoff schedule, but it was a guy we all liked coming into the season. But it was a guy we were trying to get you to trade because of the matchups. If you could have got a better option, but he's played well. But going over to that Jacksonville side, man, is there anybody?
I see one person you have on our rundown that's on their injury report, and that's James O'Shaughnessy. He's a tight end, if you don't know, because I know he's been around for a while, but he's never really been fantastic. He is the only Jaguar I've seen in anybody starting lineups in weeks that's not named James Robinson, I guess. But James Robinson we now know is out. And he did not perform fantastic last week, and he might not play now. I am not completely buying into the Dare Ogunbowale talk. He seems to be one of the hot waiver wire ads at running back because of the running back situation with them not having Hyde and not having James Robinson. But it's the Patriots defense. They're probably going to go down. I don't love it. He's even below these Boston Scott kind of names for me, but a desperation, he would be the only guy to consider.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really love him either, and I can't even pronounce his name, so he's not going to make my lineup, unfortunately. And this Jags offense has been atrocious. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I still think Trevor Lawrence has potential to be a very good quarterback in this league down the stretch. I think a new coach will definitely be able to help him with that. But he has one touchdown pass since week 9. We are in week 17. He has one touchdown pass. That's where we're at with this offense. It's been a struggle. It's a very good defense. If this is why you should have held on to the New England Patriots defense when they had Buffalo last week, because you wanted to save them for Jacksonville. Hopefully you did that. Hopefully you're playing them. If they were somehow available or still available, make sure you go pick them up because they could potentially be a league-winning defense. But moving right along to the Las Vegas Raiders and the Indianapolis Colts.
This game makes my head hurt.
Well, tell me why.
So on one side, you have Carson Wentz, who now is expected to clear the COVID list because of the new rules, but he is literally clearing on Sunday morning. I'm a little concerned because we've talked about players being limited or having stamina issues coming off the COVID list, and he would be an unvaccinated player 5 days out of being positive. So if he has any symptoms, I'm very concerned there. On the Raiders side, Darren Waller hit the COVID list. We don't know if he's going to be activated in time. I think not, because I think I saw he went on the list Wednesday. So there's a good chance he's not activated until Monday. And he was already dealing with injuries, and we were already a little questionable with him. So it just adds even more on here. So like, there's not many COVID situations in the league right now, but this is the game where it seems like it's really hitting us pretty hard.
Yeah, I think there is the game where there's a lot of question marks. I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's still a lot of teams dealing with COVID, getting multiple, but there's some key pieces on this team that we might get, we might not. The Carson Wentz playing versus not playing is definitely interesting because if he plays, how effective will he be? Do you still trust a guy like Michael Pittman in your flex? I feel like I would because he has at least been pretty consistent, but they're going to rely heavily on Jonathan Taylor like they have all season long. So that's going to be the big name to watch there. But other than Michael Pittman, like I'm not going to play Carson Wentz, even though it's an okay matchup. But because of the whole COVID news, I wouldn't put him out there. So I guess my biggest question for you would be: are you with me on playing Michael Pittman if Carson Wentz goes, or Phillip Rivers because they called him?
Oh yeah, I mean Phillip Rivers is going to come right off of the couch with his 25 kids and go play a game of football. No, I'm still in on Pittman as a flex option if there is no Carson Wentz, but I would assess again and see if there's other options on my bench. But like if you're in a deeper league and you're looking at someone like a T.Y. Hilton on your roster, he is not an option if Carson Wentz doesn't go. Like their passing game will be limited significantly. I just feel confident that Pittman's going to still be okay because he is the short yardage, sure hands guy. He almost fits the big bodied tight end kind of role because there's no dominant tight end there. So I think he's going to be the safety net for a young quarterback.
All right. And then on the Raiders side, we already mentioned Darren Waller. I know Hunter Renfrow has slowed down a little bit, but I still think you can play him despite it being a rough matchup. I still think Hunter Renfrow is in your lineup. And then Josh Jacobs is a full participant in practice this week, so he's back. It's not a great matchup for Josh Jacobs, but with the amount of running backs that are available and who you got, I feel like Josh Jacobs is in your lineup.
Yes, I agree there. If we were fully stacked at running back, he would probably fall down to the low end flex category with all the injuries and every other situation that's going on. He's a solid flex or potentially a low end RB2.
All right, that's another matchup, but let's go on to what my favorite matchup of the week is. Well, of the 1:00 games, pretty much. And that is the Kansas City Chiefs at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals coming off of their rout of the Baltimore Ravens. We'll see if they can continue that energy into this big matchup against the Chiefs. They win the AFC North. If not, they'll have to fight for it against Cleveland the next week. But we're talking fantasy this week with the Cincinnati Bengals. And the first question we always ask with the Cincinnati Bengals is which wide receiver to play. So, George, which Bengals wide receivers do you play?
I'm playing Chase and Higgins this week. I think Boyd had his solid game last week, and he's still the third on the depth chart in my opinion. So I'm going to limit it back from last week, and I'm going to say it's just going to be Chase and Higgins.
All right, I'm going to ask you because I feel like it's the other trio. Boyd or Van Jefferson?
I would go Van Jefferson slightly.
All right. Just because I feel like the two trios we're talking about the most. Mm-hmm. I'm with you with Chase and Higgins. Chase is competing for the rookie of the year as well.
And we kind of forget, like, I don't think Boyd was even super involved in that game last week. He just happened to catch a long touchdown and salvage a good game out of that.
Yeah, I think he ended the day with like 5 or 6 catches, but he did have that 83-yard touchdown. That was a big part of his fantasy day. Running back wise, Joe Mixon looks good to go. You're going to play him, and CJ Uzomah is not on my dartboard. Maybe he's on yours.
Nah, I'm good.
Moving over to the Chiefs, they should be fully loaded. Travis Kelce is back from the COVID list. Obviously, you're playing Travis Kelce. I know we just gave you the reasons why you might want to steer away from guys that aren't.
He's had a full week of practice, though.
Right. I was gonna get to that, and we're talking tight ends and Travis Kelce. You're definitely gonna play him. Tyreek Hill, he's back. He's in your lineup. I know he struggled last week. He's definitely in your lineup. CEH is not practicing, so I really like Darrell Williams to play as a matchup. I think he's above guys like Boston Scott. He's right in there in that running back 2 category for me. He also has passing potential, or pass catching potential. Maybe he will throw a passing touchdown. We'll have to wait and see. But is there any other guys on the Chiefs? I know Brian Pringle had the big game last week without, Hill was back, but not really with
Mhm.
Hill. Are you playing any of them, or nope? Hill and Kelsey are back. Those are the guys.
I think it's Hill and Kelsey again. I still think we fit the formula of the Chiefs pretty well last week when you consider there was no Travis Kelsey and Tyreek Hill was so limited that he almost wasn't there. They still had two solid wide receivers. You had Mecole Hardman score a touchdown. You had Byron Pringle have the big game. So those two spots that are solid in their passing game just move right back to Hill and Kelsey. I would not chase fantasy points. Please do not play Byron Pringle. As much as I want to Byron Pringle to be successful.
Yeah, don't pop the Pringles can, because then you can't stop, or at least that's what Nate Burleson said when he was doing the highlight packages for the game in breaks. I don't know why I remembered that all the way to Thursday, but it resonated with me. So, but all that to say, don't start Brian Pringle. Should be a great matchup. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. The next game, I don't really care about at all. No offense to Giants and Bears fans out there. This game is going to be rough, but I do have to say, you Giants fans, no such thing as a meaningless game. According to Joe Judge, who says Jake Fromm and Mike Glennon will both play. I don't know why. I don't know why we're doing this, but they'll both play.
So, in my opinion, Daniel Jones has struggled this year. He's now out for the season with the injury. I think they're trying to will Jake Fromm to being a decent quarterback so they can feel like maybe there's some hope there. But we saw Jake Fromm was awful last week. Mike Glennon has been holding onto the ball way too long. And the last time we saw a two quarterback system was not that long ago. It was the past few weeks with the Panthers, and it's been an absolute train wreck. So I expect nothing out of anybody on this Giants team except for maybe Saquon Barkley because of, his ceiling, his talent, and he's still going to get some volume.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to play Saquon most likely, but if you made it to your championship with Saquon on your team, I probably wasn't playing him, so keep doing what you're doing. If you're in your consolation bracket, you're trying to avoid the 10th place finish, then yeah, go ahead and play Saquon.
If you're an
Barkley.
injury-riddled team that got somewhere with James Robinson and he's out now, maybe Saquon Barkley can fill the flex position, but you're still hoping that he scores a touchdown or two and it really helps you out.
Absolutely. On the Chicago Bears side, the quarterback, they're not doing a two quarterback strategy as of yet, but Andy Dalton was back to a full participant while Justin Fields was still limited. We'll see if Fields is back and ready to go this week. I'll be interested if they bring him back or not.
Man, play Nick Foles.
That's what all Eagles fans want. I mean, he didn't look – he won them the game.
Yeah. I mean and Cole Kmet was a decent option last week on the dartboard because
George
of that.
wants you all to play.
Darnell Mooney is still a decent play, especially in a good matchup. Say what you want about Nick Foles, but players respond to him. They always have. So you might say, oh, it's quarterback 3. I might have to fade the Bears' weapons. I'm playing the same Bears that I've always played if Nick Foles is in there. I'm not worried about Montgomery. I'm not worried about Mooney. I would throw Kmet on the dartboard, even if Foles plays, and it's not Justin Fields or Andy Dalton.
Hey, this is when Foles plays best. Late December, January, February. So maybe they will. But we'll wait and see on who the final quarterback is for this team. But yeah, you mentioned the two other guys. Montgomery, he's back in. He's in your lineup. He's a solid running back this week, and it's a pretty decent matchup. Mooney, I think he's up there with a Michael Pittman, in my opinion. He's borderline flexible. Evaluate it. See what you got. Don't force Mooney into your lineup, but if you have to play him, I think you'll be okay. And I just can't get behind you on the Cole Kmet dartboard. I mean, I think he is, but I can't agree with you as hard as you're pushing for Cole Kmet. So, listeners, I'm saying I like Cole Kmet as a dartboard, but to George, actually, I'm saying, no, sir. No, sir.
Oh, I didn't hear what you said there to the fans, so I think it's a solid dartboard play.
Yeah, it was the
Atlanta Falcons
broke up.
Yeah. The Atlanta Falcons are traveling to the Buffalo Bills to wrap up our 1:00 matchups. We talked a little bit of record-breaking scenarios earlier, Kyle Pitts is in a record-breaking scenario here as well. He needs 11 yards to break Julio Jones' Falcons rookie record in yards, and he is 128 yards away from Mike Ditka's rookie tight end receiving yard record. If he gets to 1,000, which is a little bit short of that 128, he would be one of 2 rookie tight ends to break 1,000. It would just be him and Ditka. So as much as we've been critical of Kyle Pitts, he is definitely one of the best rookie tight ends we have seen in years and years and years. And he is still a top 10 tight end in fantasy. It's just how annoying the position is.
Well, I think, they went out there and they signed Kyle Pitts to be the Julio Jones replacement. And boy, did they find someone, a guy that's all yardage and no touchdowns.
You're not wrong.
He is yet to
I don't know what it is with the Falcons.
He is yet to touch or catch a touchdown, not in London. He has 1 touchdown on the season.
In American soil, he has not caught a touchdown.
That's correct for the Atlanta Falcons. Maybe this will be the week. Maybe he'll break the record on a touchdown catch. I mean, it's a tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills. It would kind of concern me a little bit because he hasn't. I mean, they're coming eventually, you would think, but this Bills defense is a good matchup. Kyle Pitts is a guy that you're most likely putting in your lineup, but he is a guy that you might want to consider a different option if that is available to you, just because it is a decent matchup or not a great matchup against the Bills. He hasn't caught a lot of touchdowns. He's been an all the yardage guy, so if there's an option out there, you might want to pivot to it. But other than Kyle Pitts, Cordarrelle Patterson, you can play him,
even though that's been rough.
Yeah, I mean it's been rough, but you still got to. He got you. I mean, he probably didn't get you there because the bad week 2 weeks
ago. He got you
ago,
to the playoffs.
Right. Hey, go win 3rd place because you can still do that. I know. And that's what we always talk about here at the Couch GMs is even though you might not be playing for a championship, and we all want those championship trophies, those titles, the rings, whatever your league does, you want that the most. But stay competitive all season long. Try to get to the best possible finish. So,
Kyle Pitts I'm playing hard for like 3 7th places even. And that means I won last week in all those consolation games. So never give up on that.
Never give up. There's not a lot to talk about on the Atlanta Falcons. The Buffalo Bills, though, I do feel like there's a lot we should discuss. And it's the wide receivers because, we talked up, in Isaiah McKenzie at the waiver show, but then the COVID rules changed and even unvaccinated players were able to come back. So Cole Beasley and Gabriel Davis will both be back for this game. So my question is, outside of Stephon Diggs, is there a wide receiver you're comfortable playing?
The man right now to me is Gabriel Davis because we saw how much Gabriel Davis was emerging before the COVID list situation. I think he is quickly becoming that wide receiver 2 that we were hoping he was going to be in the preseason. I'll let you look and just make sure that Emmanuel Sanders' status is what I think it is. I don't think he is back yet. I'm really not sure. But even yet, I think Gabriel Davis has etched out a role in that offense. And definitely don't start Isaiah McKenzie now, like we said, because of having Davis and Beasley back. I think Davis is my favorite guy behind Diggs.
Yeah, so Sanders was back last week. He dropped a touchdown, but he was a DNP on Thursday with his knee injury. So definitely something to monitor.
So he would rest there.
Yeah, it could be like the whole veteran rest type thing, just like try to get him ready for game time. I will put in the COVID caveat with Gabriel Davis and Cole Beasley. I know they went on the list earlier in the week, but they would still be coming off of it pretty quickly. So they're where they're at.
They will be close to 10 days because they both missed last week. Right. They're both not vaccinated. I get that, but I think their day 10 would have been Monday or something. So they'll be 9 days through. They'll have a couple of practices under their belt. They might be okay, but yeah, definitely it's something to be a little concerned of.
I just keep it in the back of your mind. I do think Gabriel Davis is the guy to play. I would still do that, but he might not be on the field as many snaps as I guess what I was trying to say. But
I'll give you a question actually while we're on Gabriel Davis, and you can help me beat your fiance. I have Gabriel Davis, and I'm debating at wide receiver 2 between him and Mike Williams, another person coming off of the COVID list. So very interesting there.
That is a good one. I'm gonna go Gabriel Davis. And that's not because you're playing my fiance, and some people say Mike Williams is literally just coming off the COVID list. I think he was activated today, which is
On
Thursday, the
Thursday. Yep.
time we're recording it. You're listening to it on Friday or Saturday. But Thursday, he just came off the COVID list. They have the Denver Broncos, which has a good pass defense. Rookie Patrick Surtain. I mean, he's not getting talked about a lot because Micah Parsons is like blowing up the world for rookie defenders, but he has played really well. But maybe we should just talk about this Broncos Chargers matchup as we get into the 4 o'clock window. The Chargers, like, wow, that was rough. What happened last week?
They've just like had this reputation of disappearing at times this year. I don't know if it's because they have a lot of young players, they have a second-year quarterback, but I'm not entirely concerned just because I've seen them do this before and then come back and have a good week the next week. So I'm still playing them as usual. Obviously, Mike Williams is borderline flex. Keenan Allen's in your lineup. Justin Herbert's in my lineup. And I mean, Austin Eckler as well. He's another person that was missed last week with COVID. He's right back in my lineup there too. But I get the concern from people, but as much as you can chase fantasy points one way by like starting a Byron Pringle this week, you can also chase fantasy points the other way by benching a Justin Herbert or a Keenan Allen. You don't want to do that.
No, I'm with you. Even though that, like I mentioned, the Broncos are a good defense. They're top 10 against fantasy quarterbacks, top 10 against fantasy wide receivers as well. So it will be a little bit of a rough day, but Herbert has shown that they like to throw the ball over the yard. They go for it a lot. They'll have Eckler back. They'll have Michael Williams back. They're fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, both teams are. This is a big matchup. And I think they're going to come out a little bit on fire after getting straight up embarrassed last week by the Houston Texans, which is a shock to all of us. But the Denver Broncos side, I mean, we're done talking about their wide receivers when it comes to fantasy. There's still no one. So I get it is the question of the day for the Broncos is which running back or both?
Both.
I figured I don't even know why I asked. I mean, that was pretty straightforward.
I think we're kind of at that point here. Exactly. Like you can say, oh, I favor Javonte Williams slightly, or oh, I favor Melvin Gordon slightly. But like I feel like the difference is one of them might be RB15 and the other one might be RB18. Like that's kind of where we're at in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, they literally do everything together. They're both on the injury report with limited practices.
They probably dorm together, eat dinners. I don't know. It's just what it seems like.
So, yeah, I think you could play both of them. Which one gets into the end zone will be the big deal. But we just saw that the Chargers' run defense isn't very good. So it could be a big game for both of them. But outside of that, there's honestly, no other Broncos players worth talking about. So why don't we talk about the team that beat the Chargers and the Houston Texans? They are going to the San Francisco 49ers. This is where we're going to get fancy, and the only time you can get cute. Jimmy Garoppolo has not practiced all week. Trey Lance, at what point do you put him in your starting lineup?
I like the way that you described it on our Tuesday show. So if you missed it, I'll try to highlight it the best that I can. So you have your top end starting quarterbacks, which I believe you labeled as Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and who was your third? I'm blanking now. You missed Allen on Tuesday.
I think I said Rodgers.
Rodgers
okay. As well. I might have included Herbert because there was three, and then I forgot Allen, which we remember.
You might have included Herbert. And then the rushing quarterback. So like a Lamar if he goes, but I think that's kind of changed in our minds after seeing the practice. A Jalen Hurts in there as well, and potentially a Taysom Hill, and then Trey Lance. So like you have a couple of guys. Like don't get too cute and bench the guy that got you there, or the guy that has the high ceiling like the Patrick Mahomes. But if you're in what after that would be considered the streaming category, he's one of the top streamers in my opinion.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a few questions because I think this will be fun. Okay. Russell Wilson or Trey Lance?
Trey Lance.
Kirk Cousins or Trey Lance?
Trey Lance.
Matt Stafford or Trey Lance?
Oh, that's good. Slightly in Stafford.
Dak Prescott or Trey Lance?
I don't like Dak's inconsistency of late. I'm going Trey Lance.
Wow. And then my guy, Joe Burrow or Trey Lance.
Slightly in Lance.
Wow. All right. I think George is more
And I'm a
hyped
Burrow guy.
I think George
I'm
is
a
more
Burrow
hyped on the
guy.
Trey Lance than I am on this one. Kyler Murray or Trey Lance. That might have been the third guy I included.
Kyler is another rushing quarterback. I think that has to fit above.
Yeah, I think he was the guy I included, and
That's probably it. Yeah.
All right, so we're definitely some Trey Lance fans here because it is such a positive matchup. I think the other big news for the 49ers is Elijah Mitchell has been limited all week as of right now, so he might be back this week. If he is back, are you putting him right back in your lineup? Do you like Jeff Wilson? Are they both out? What about the running backs for the 49ers?
I would say if you hear any kind of chance that he's going to be limited, Eli Mitchell's going to be limited, I would avoid the backfield entirely because you know that he would get a couple carries, and Jeff Wilson would get a couple carries, and Deebo Samuel would get a couple carries. But I doubt you're going to hear anything about that because the 49ers are so weird about their running back. So I would just say if Eli Mitchell's in there with the past that we've seen from them, he's going to be the bell cow back. He would be the guy I would put in the lineup. And then he's only going to get a couple carries taken away from Deebo Samuel. So he should get his normal workload if you don't hear anything different.
All right. Well, I hope they know because Jeff Wilson might be in my fantasy starting lineup for a championship matchup because I'm so hurt at running backs and dependent on other players that might or might not play. The Houston Texans side, Brandon Cooks, I believe, is still on the COVID list. I was going to say, I think he's still on the COVID list. He might, under the new things, he should be back. But again, now we're talking those guys.
Davis Mills.
So, no, Davis Mills or Trey Lance.
I'm not even answering that question. You don't deserve an answer to that question. No, I was talking more on, you're talking Brandon Cooks now with Davis Mills. So like, it's even a little bit more sketchy on top of the fact that he could be limited from COVID and they already stink.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody else on the Texans. Rex Burkhead, he had a pretty good game last week. Are you
49ers defense? The 49ers defense is better. I don't expect another 25-point game out of Rex Burkhead. Put him below the group of running backs I was talking about earlier that features Boston Scott. So desperation, last minute play, or your waiver wire is devastated. Sure, but that's about it.
The random somebody got hurt in practice in the 4 o'clock window and you just need somebody.
Exactly. Because you probably could do worse, but like he is probably going to finish as like running back 26, 27, most likely, something like that. And then you have that chance of him hitting his ceiling again and going for an RB2 game. But I don't like that chance compared to a lot of the other guys we've talked about.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was just pulling up real quick. Davis Mills, we were laughing. Mm-hmm. But the last couple of weeks, he put up 2 18-point weeks in a row. So this guy has been playing a little bit better.
So is he the best quarterback in this draft class now? Although for a third-round quarterback, because the Texans didn't have a pick till the third round, they honestly didn't do too bad. Like, normally third-round quarterbacks are not impressive. The only third-round quarterback I can think of in recent memory that has turned into something quickly was Russell Wilson.
Yeah, he's the most notable. There's been some other guys that have been decent, and it doesn't look like Davis Mills is going to, be a franchise guy for the next 10 years. But the value they found him, it gives them some stability if they do move on from Deshaun Watson in the offseason. Doesn't force their hand into getting a quarterback in this draft class, which isn't a very good quarterback class. So they definitely have some room to grow with Davis Mills, and these reps are invaluable. But that is way too much Houston Texans talk for one podcast. So we're going to go to another game, which I feel like if this was week 4, this game would be so hype. But it is week 17. That is the Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints. And the big news is Sam Darnold was named the starter. George, how does that affect their skill position players for you?
I give a slight boost to DJ Moore. With that being said, DJ Moore was already kind of sketchy. I'm keeping Robbie Anderson around where I had him, which is borderline flex. So it's probably like flexible and then the borderline flex kind of. I'm still scared about both, especially. I mean, I get the Saints passing defense hasn't been super strong, but Sam Darnold coming off a long-term injury, an offense that was already sputtering with him before. I want to try to find better options if I can help it. I'm just glad they're out of the 2-quarterback system, because we've seen so many times that the 2-quarterback system doesn't work. And that's what made me laugh even more when we said about the Giants doing it earlier. What are the odds, though, that we see a Wildcat play out of Cam in the red zone again? Even though Sam Darnold's back, like, it's going to happen, right?
I'm almost as confident that that's going to happen. That, like, if you're in a 2-quarterback flex league, like Cam Newton might, and you're struggling to find a quarterback, like, you might still do play Cam Newton for the touchdown.
Sam Darnold or Cam Newton?
Honestly, even though Sam's the starter, like, I might feel better with Cam Newton.
So you're playing a low volume running back, basically, over Sam Darnold. I get that. Okay.
I mean, I'm just being honest.
You're not wrong. And he's the reason that someone like a Chuba Hubbard is not playable, in my opinion, anymore. And it stinks because he was decent, like the consistent 10-point-a-week guy beforehand. But Cam Newton has ruined running backs that aren't named Christian McCaffrey in that offense.
Yeah, I mean, Chuba has not been the same running back he was when the first McCaffrey injury. But I'm with you. DJ Moore, gets a small uptick, but again, he's like a Terry McLaurin, a guy we had Mclaurin, a guy that we had a lot of high hopes for coming into the season, just hasn't hit that. Moving over to the Saints side, Alvin Kamara. Okay, moving on. I mean, honestly, like
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love because I think the Panthers defense, I know they just got beat pretty bad against I still think they're a pretty good defense.
It's just the rushing ability. Like, Taysom Hill can throw for 150 and 2 picks, or he threw for 4 picks earlier in the season, but he ran for enough yards that he still scored 20. Like, just knowing that that's a possibility makes me think that he should be in the top 12 in quarterbacks. I get it that the matchup's not great. He's coming off of COVID. There's probably flashier names. Because of his legs, it's a decent play.
Yeah, I'll say it again. Running quarterbacks that run the ball are a cheat code in fantasy football, but that's enough. That's a divisional matchup that was actually moved from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Not 100% sure why on that one, but we got 2 more games left in the 4 o'clock window. The first one, the ever exciting Detroit Lions at the Seattle Seahawks. I feel like this is actually going to be a really hard fought maybe not a back and forth, but like down to the wire, pounded out ground game. Maybe not actually, like when I say ground game, like the running is fantastic, but just like a low scoring, good defensive play affair.
I agree. And my favorite player in this entire matchup, I mean, I get Amon-Ra St. Brown's probably close, but is Elijah Penny.
Rashad.
Like, sorry, that I'm talking too much Giants this podcast. That's the Giants, brother. Rashad Penny. Don't go out there and get Elijah Penny, please. No. Rashad Penny is my favorite player in this entire matchup. I think he's shown a lot of flashes. I think the Seahawks are finally confident in giving him RB1 snaps and carries, and the matchup is prime.
Yeah, I like Rashad Penny a lot in this matchup. It is a decent matchup. You have to at least consider rolling a guy like DK Metcalf out there. I think you play him as well, and I think Tyler Lockett is like a flexible option. Right? I mean, DK Metcalf, him are both flex projected. That could be wide receiver.
How the mighty have fallen.
I mean, but they could end up being like the top wide receiver on the week. Like, they have that ceiling still.
Yeah. We still have. Could it be a Lockett week or a DK week? But it's no longer one or the other. Now it's the third option of neither.
Correct. So takes care of the Seattle Seahawks. The Detroit Lions, I think the biggest news is DeAndre Swift is expected to play. They said they're not shutting him down until after the Green Bay game, which is after the last week of the season. He was a full participant on Wednesday and Thursday. Now, he is a 4 o'clock game. So if you have DeAndre Swift, George, I'm asking you to tell our fans, but also for my own sake, do you trust him in your lineup?
If he was a traditional running back, I would probably try to lean away. But knowing that if you're in a PPR or a half PPR, he is so involved in offense in the passing game too. I would feel more confident rolling him out, knowing that there's probably teams like yours, Cody, that don't have many options. Like you're talking about the chance of playing Jeff Wilson instead, or playing. I don't even know some of the names you said. You just dropped Myles Gaskin. There was another one. Like I like DeAndre Swift a lot better than a lot of those other flex options or the guys off the waiver wire who you're hoping have a good game. I would rather play that big name. Now, I know I'm going to sound counterproductive to what I said Tuesday when I was like, Darren Waller, if he's in your lineup, you just play him because he's a stud in the position, and the running back position's not the same. But seeing full participants, seeing how the Lions have put faith in him, seeing how they're still, like, the running back position might not be as solid as we hope it is. I would probably roll him out unless you have a solid 2 running backs that have gotten you this far. Don't get too cute and pull them for no reason. Just if you're struggling, I like him as that low-end RB2 flex guy.
No, I agree. I mean, because like you mentioned, I'm most likely going to play him. I think you hit the nail on the head. He might not see the work he saw mid-season when he was getting, double-digit carries every game, but he has the potential to catch a 5-yard ball, catch a screen pass, and take it 50 yards to the house. And you can't say that about a lot of the waiver guys that you picked up. Like Jordan Howard, I don't think he's getting a 50-yard touchdown. He might get more carries, but I don't think he has the explosive playness to continue on. So even like a guy like Jordan Howard, who would be in line to be a lot of carries against a decent team, I'd probably still roll out a Swift. But then again, I have him, and I'm not very lucky in fantasy matchups in the championship round, as I'm going on my 3rd straight year as in the championship in our league of record, and I've yet to win one. So maybe you shouldn't play DeAndre Swift and just let me do it, and then you all can laugh at me after this. But the other guy on the Lions I do want to talk about, and you already mentioned him, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Dude is in your lineup. Like, if it's him or DK Metcalf, you're playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know that's crazy, but he has been getting double-digit targets the last couple of weeks. We thought it might take a step back with Tim Boyle. It didn't. He is the feature guy, the go-to guy in the passing game for the Detroit Lions. And until further notice, or until next year, you're playing him. If you're in a keeper league, you should really strongly consider keeping him or Jalen Waddle, guys that you picked near the end of Amon-Ra you probably didn't even pick up. But Jalen Waddle you got near the end of the draft. He's the guy you should keep on a keeper for what he's doing. Amon-Ra St. Brown is another guy for keeper leagues that you should look into keeping heading into next season.
Definitely agree with you there. I don't have anything to add, so I can move us to our last 4:00 game. It would be the Arizona Cardinals and the Dallas Cowboys. This has potential to be a heck of an offensive game. And then if you're on the Cowboys defense side, the fact that they're probably going to score another touchdown because they feel like they score a touchdown every single week. I'm just going to start with the Cowboys defense here because I know I'm somebody that in a lot of leagues picked them up earlier in the year, and I've just been riding that defense like basically the entire second half of the season. This matchup does look scary, but just because of the mass amount of sacks and turnovers the Cowboys defense get, I almost don't care if they give up 35 points to the Cardinals because I still think they're going to get enough other stats to make up for it. And if that does happen, still get 8 points. I know that seems ridiculous, but it's just how it's been for them.
Yeah, I think I feel pretty good about the Cowboys defense. Yes, there's defense I like a lot better. If for some, like I mentioned at the top, is somebody because the Patriots were playing the Bills last week, and you went out there and or able to pick up the Patriots, I play them over Dallas. I think you could even look at like an Indianapolis. They've had a pretty good defense as of late, and they have a pretty easy matchup. Like they were available in some waivers against the Raiders. So there's definitely defenses out there I like. But the Cowboys defense, to your point, has been dominant enough, getting enough turnovers, sacks, which come in waves. So, I mean, it could be a game that doesn't happen, and you'll just have to live with that. But because they've done it consistently, I think you can still roll them out there and feel pretty good about it. And don't forget, this isn't the same Arizona Cardinals team that, a month ago we thought was like the best team in the NFL. Cliff Kingsbury, coach of the year. They've been struggling. They haven't really been able to get back on track without DeAndre Hopkins. Hopefully it is this week for George as an Eagles fan, for Cody as a Packers fan, for everyone out there, because go Cards.
Yes.
But that's what we're hoping for. But don't get me wrong, this defense for Dallas is playing extremely well right now, and the Cardinals aren't playing great. So I do like you throwing in the Dallas defense. Wide receivers, though, for the Cowboys, they're another big three. Cooper, he said, he thought he could do more on the offense. Well, they tried to feature him last week, and it worked. I mean, I feel like they all had pretty decent games. I know, like, Lamb didn't find the end zone, but he still had a pretty decent game, at least targets
they scored
and catches
so many
wise.
mass amount of points.
Right. So they're all in this matchup. Another game we're expecting to be high scoring. Do you feel confident with all three of them? I know Michael Gallup seems to be the guy that we're always like, is he in your lineup or not? The other two are pretty much a lock.
Yeah, the CD and Cooper are a lock to me. I still don't like playing Gallup, and I don't know what it is, but I don't think you convince me enough that the Cowboys are going to put up another 50 burger on the Arizona Cardinals. And that's where I'd be confident of saying, oh, if that's going to happen, I think Gallup's got to find a touchdown in there somewhere, or find some yards in there somewhere. You could see a more modest 21 to 28 point game from the Cowboys offense, and maybe the rest of the points come from their defense. But and in that case, I like Cooper, I like CD, and I like Zeke to get the touchdowns. And after that, I'm pushing Gallup to the side. I'm also still starting Dalton Schultz just because of the tight end position. But I feel like he's just the odd man out every time I try to calculate how this offense is going to work.
Yeah, I think I'm out on Michael Gallup as well this week. You mentioned Dalton Schultz. I think him and both Zach Ertz are in play for tight ends this week. Gallup did have like the stretch where he was seeing, 9 or 10 targets for multiple weeks in a row. That has dropped to 5 over the last 2 weeks. Cooper has gotten healthier, came off the COVID list. They seem to be getting him more involved. So Michael Gallup is coming more of like a big play threat. Like, I don't like to always compare players, but he feels very similar to like a Marquez Valdes-Scantling for me. Like a guy that, he's out there a lot. He gets a lot of targets, some games, has potential to take it 70 yards, but has a lot of games where it's 3 catches, 30 yards. Like, that's just, I feel like he's the third option in the offense, and that's how he's used.
Yes, agreed. And then I can move us over to the Cardinals side. We'll stay on the wide receiver train here, because someone else who I feel like hasn't gotten a lot of play, hasn't gotten a lot of talk. We've talked about him a little bit the last few weeks, though. Christian Kirk has been great without DeAndre Hopkins. And even though the Cowboys defense we say is strong, say he gets matched up on Trayvon Diggs might pick two balls off, but he also is the disparity there. Like, he's going to give up a long touchdown probably too if that happens. So I could like Christian Kirk to lose that matchup most times in that game, but he still gets 4 catches and one of them goes for a 60-yard touchdown. Like, that's well within the range of possibility.
You're right. I mean, Christian Kirk saw 9 targets last week, 12 targets the week before. He hasn't been able to he found the end zone 2 weeks ago, but he didn't find the end zone last week, so his points were a little bit lower. But you're right. He seems to be the guy that is picking up the slack. They still like AJ Green in the red zone and targeting him. He still gets his. He's had a pretty decent season. So I think those two you can play. They're not like the prettiest names, but I do think that you can at least roll them out there. But that's pretty much it for me on the, who you would play from the Cardinals wide receivers. Last on the Cardinals, though, is the running backs. James Conner is still a DNP all week. It doesn't look like he'll be ready to go on Sunday, so that leaves Chase Edmonds. He had a pretty good game last week. Are you still confident with Chase Edmonds? Are you worried about it with this whole defense against the Dallas Cowboys? Like, where are you at with Chase Edmonds?
I think the Cardinals have enough weapons on the offense to take some of the pressure off of Edmonds. I still think he's going to get his carries, and I think that is going to help open up the offense for him, because the Cowboys have to keep somebody on Kyler. They still have some passing options to keep the Cowboys from stacking it in the box. So, and especially without James Conner, and that gives him a couple extra carries. I like the chances of him, and he has a chance to get a red zone touchdown too that he doesn't normally get the chance to do with James Conner there. But honestly, I almost feel like if there's no James Conner, it helps AJ Green and Zach Ertz more than it helps Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds is going to get a couple extra carries, but I think that there's more of a chance that there's a red zone touchdown for one of them two if James Conner's not there to zap it.
Interesting. I didn't think about how the James Conner affects the wide receivers. I'm going to ask you, though, two guys that have had up and down seasons. One is kind of dealing with an injury right now. That's Antonio Gibson. If he does play, him or Chase Edmonds?
Assuming there's no Connor because he's pretty banged up. I'd go Chase Edmonds.
Okay. Interesting to know there. Taking notes for another fantasy league that I might be in that have that question. So thank you, George. I think that wraps up this matchup. Is it time, George? Do we get to talk about the Sunday night matchup?
It is time. It is the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. Cody, take it away.
Well, first off, this is why we're rooting for the Arizona Cardinals, because if the Cardinals win, the Packers can clinch the 1 seed with the victory on Sunday night. They just need the Cardinals to win. So that's what we're hoping for. The Packers, I feel like it's going under the radar a little bit, but they have currently 12 players on the COVID list. Quite a few defensive linemen against Dalvin Cook, playing in a game that is projected to be 2 degrees. It'll be a cold, bittery day in Lambeau
Dalvin going
Field.
For 36.
Dalvin Cook, it could be a great play. Not gonna lie, I'm a little scared about it as a Packers fan, but I'll talk about the Packers. George can talk about the Vikings because I can't do that for too long. It doesn't look like any of the all pros that people are thinking for the Packers are going to be coming back. Fantasy wise, I mentioned it's going to be cold. AJ Dillon, you can play him. Aaron Jones, he has been limited with a knee injury. You still got to roll him out there. He's used in the past game. He's a special running back. I think both running backs are viable. And then, obviously, even though it's cold, you're going to play Davante Adams. The good news is it doesn't appear that there's going to be a lot of wind in the forecast, just cold, so that shouldn't affect the pass game too much. So even a guy like Aaron Rodgers, maybe George will still play Trey Lance over Aaron Rodgers because,
that's tough. I'm gonna refrain.
He's gonna refrain. I'm playing Aaron Rodgers, but again, you can just say I'm biased. We'll see how this team hands up. The Vikings beat the Packers earlier this season. Last year, it was, if you remember, it was a windy, cold day in Lambeau again, and the Vikings beat the Packers because they couldn't stop the run. This is a huge game, not only for playoffs, for divisional, but there is going to be a lot of people that have the Cooper Cup against them in fantasy, but they're playing Davante Adams, and a lot of matchups this week are going to come down to this Thursday night matchup. Dalvin Cook and Davante Adams are the two big names, and it could be, hopefully it's a high-scoring game for fantasy players, but it looks like on paper this could be a low-scoring game, so keep that in the back of your mind when you're making your flex options. Maybe you have to throw a higher variant wide receiver out there in case a Dalvin Cook or a Davante Adams don't put up as many points as we're accustomed to.
And I'm more worried about the wide receivers, I think, than the running backs. I like both Packers running back plays. I think they're both going to have their normal weeks, maybe even give them a slight boost. On the Vikings side, I don't want to get you too excited if you're someone that might be relying on Dalvin Cook for a championship, but I think 20 is a solid number for Dalvin Cook this week. And I'm going to keep it simple on the Vikings because I'm going to stick with the same thing. I'm playing him. I'm playing Justin Jefferson, and that's it.
No KJ Osborne with Adam Thielen heading to IR. No Tyler Conklin.
Nope. I like the fact that this could be maybe a little bit of a lower scoring game, but the star power is going to still get what it needs. So give me Jefferson. I mean, I also don't like Cousins in primetime. I feel like he might be slowly working out of that, but limit the wide receivers to just Justin Jefferson because he's still going to get his, even if Cousins struggles or if the passing game struggles.
All right. I hope you're wrong on the Dalvin Cook, but I know we just saw Nick Chubb pretty much run all over the Packers. The Browns didn't stick to it, but we know the Vikings will. So I think that is definitely something to keep an eye on as we move into
Nick Chubb.
Yeah, that's a great transition that I almost missed, so thank you.
Yeah.
Nick Chubb, our last matchup, the Monday night game. Cleveland Browns are going to the potential farewell of Big Ben in Heinz Field. Cleveland Browns. I'm assuming you like Nick Chubb. Is there anybody else?
There's one league where I'm pretty desperate at wide receiver, and in my flex consideration is Jarvis Landry. Don't love it.
Yikes.
But I want your thoughts on that. Like, is that too desperate? Would you try to go find one of those wide receivers you talked about off the waiver wire, or would you think about Jarvis Landry?
Your waiver wire has to be picked pretty thin for me to trust Jarvis Landry. I'm assuming this is one of the matchups that you're playing for 7th place, not a championship.
Would not be. No, it's actually a situation I'm playing for 5th. But
okay,
yes.
5th, but still. So I think I would have some fun with it as well because you're not playing for a championship, and go out there and get one of the maybe a high variant wide receiver. Obviously if Amon-Ra St. Brown is out there or Michael Pittman, which they're probably not, you go out there and get them. But I totally just blanked on the guy I was thinking. Like it's gonna sound crazy, but even like a Robbie Anderson, like I might play him over Jarvis Landry. Like just the big playability. It might not work out. It might be, but just change up who you get to root for. I don't love I don't think he's like a difference maker. So maybe find a guy on the waivers, maybe a Marquez Valdez-Scantling and hope for the 70-yard touchdown, or maybe play Michael Gallup to see if you like him or not. Maybe he'll win you the game, and then that'll be your favorite guy going into next year. But yeah, I wouldn't play.
Hard sell there.
I wouldn't play Jarvis Landry.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, there's Chubb. I'm pretty much avoiding everyone else there. I don't think Nick Chubb's done enough to be that flexible RB2 that we thought of him as at the beginning of the season and last year.
Are we talking about Kareem Hunt? Because you said Nick Chubb, and I'm very confused.
Sorry, Kareem Hunt.
Okay, yeah. I was like,
wow, I can't believe I said that.
Nick Chubb is definitely like an RB1. What do you mean he's not really
flexible?
No,
he's an RB1. No, I'm talking about Kareem Hunt. I don't know why I said Nick Chubb again. So he's not even in my consideration either. Oh, so there's another one. Yeah, that's it. I'm avoiding the tight ends. The only reason I would ever like the tight ends is if they're the only one left because of COVID, which happened twice this last 3 weeks. But no, it's just Chubb.
Yeah, I'm with you. On to the Steelers. I feel like it's a very similar situation. They just have a few more players, and it's Najee Harris, and it still is Deontay Johnson. I know he had a rough week last week, but it's Deontay Johnson. Like, he still gets targets. He end up scoring a touchdown. And then the last thing, Freiermuth is a full participant coming off of his concussion, so I think he's back on your dartboard because Big Ben likes to go to him. But George, is there any other Steelers that you want to talk about?
I'm still not trusting Claypool. I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I'll give you one more who would just start before we get out of here. So I have a situation where I'm with Noah Fant and Pat Freiermuth. Where would you go there?
Noah? I really want to say Noah Fant, but I really don't want to trust like the Broncos passing game. And maybe it's some recency bias.
It is Drew Lock, I believe, this week. So
it is Drew Lock, and I'd play Noah Fant. The Chargers defense has been banged up. I'm actually going to pull up their injury report again. I had it up earlier. The only question I would watch is because Derwin hasn't been playing. If Derwin James plays, I might pivot last second. I know we don't normally talk about defensive players on this podcast, but he is a phenomenal safety that has just been dealt or destroyed his beginning of his career with injuries. He just can't stay healthy. But when he's out there, he is a huge difference maker. If I could type,
I know he practiced on Wednesday. I'll try to talk a little bit here while you get to it. So I know he practiced on Wednesday. That is promising considering he had not practiced pretty much each of the last 3 weeks. I think he was active for a couple of games, but had very limited to no snaps.
Yeah, he was activated last week against the Texans in an emergency role, and when they were losing, people were like, I think this is an emergency, and he still didn't get in. But he was limited both Wednesday and Thursday with his hamstring. So if he's back, it might scare me a little bit from Noah Fant, and I might pivot to Pat Freiermuth because I think they're close. But right now, I'm going to say Noah Fant.
Okay. That, I think, is a good way to wrap up our fantasy championship breakdowns. Cody, any last words you want to say? Words of advice, good luck, anything like that to everybody out there listening?
Yeah, I have a few words. Good luck if you are playing in your fantasy championship. We hope you get a ring. Trust me, I know how hard it is to lose in your final round. I'm fully expecting to go for the third time as a charm as a runner-up because that just is my luck with fantasy football. I'm right there with you. if you feel like you never get the victories. So good luck. As always, thanks for listening to the Couch GMs podcast. Don't forget, we're on Twitter at the Couch GMs. We're on Instagram at the Couch GMs, Facebook at the Couch GMs. We have a website, thecouchgms.com. All are great ways to get in contact us. You can comment below this YouTube video with your questions. We'll get back to you before game time. If you have lineup advice, if you have a question on who you should start, we'll be happy to answer it. We love doing this. That's why we do this podcast. We love talking fantasy football, and we'd love to talk with you guys. That's why Tyler always says this podcast is more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
Yes, it is, Cody. Thank you one more time for tuning into the Couch GMs podcast. For Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth. Good luck to everybody, and we will see you all next week.